A basketball hero around here is treated like a god. I mean, how can you ever find out what he could really do? I don't want this to be the high point of his life. I've seen them, the real sad ones. They sit around the rest of their lives talking about the glory days when they were 17 years old.
You know, most people would kill to be treated like a god just for a few moments.
Welcome to Keeping the Nostalgia Alive, the Indiana Basketball Memory Show. I am your host, Billy Powell. You can go to Keeping the Nostalgia Alive, that's all one word, keepingthenostalgiaalive.podbean.com, and you can now listen to close to about 190 interviews that we've done. Most of those interviews are attached to the state of Indiana and the great game of basketball. And this show will you'll also enjoy because it is attached to basketball, but we also have music and a lot of other goodies that we're going to chat with. I always do 6 degrees of separation from the guest that I have on my programs, and it always seems to work out. And I know you guys have always, if you haven't heard of 6 degrees of separation, Google it or type it in your Yahoo search bar. But I was born and raised in Indianapolis, Indiana. Went to Broad Ripple High School, and from my freshman year through my senior year, we played the Northwest Space Pioneers in the game of basketball. And today with us is Bob Ritter. He is also a musician. You can go to beaumarandritter.com and check out his music. I did last night. It's very enjoyable. You can also see him on YouTube. Just type in Beaumar and Ritter in your search bar there on YouTube. So his dad is Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame member Bill Ritter, and I've had many interactions with Bill when he was coaching at Northwest. Unfortunately, he has passed away, but a great guy, and I've had a lot of interactions with Northwest basketball. And of course, I went to Indiana State University. Bob Ritter was on is a Sycamore, probably one of the few basketball players at any college that has played college basketball, and also went back to their college or university and sang the national anthem. So without further ado, Bob Ritter, thank you so much for spending some time with us during these difficult times of the virus. It's amazing how many extra plays I've gotten on my shows because people can't get out and about and do something, and they're a little bored. And if this is the way I got some of my listens, well, just so be it. So welcome to the show, and thank you for taking some time out of your schedule to share nostalgia and talk about your life in music and in basketball.
Great. It's great to be with you, Billy. And yeah, the schedule's kind of wide open these days, so it's not a problem at all. So glad to be with you.
Yeah, a lot of people I've interviewed said, this is the best time to get me because I don't have a lot of stuff to do.
Right. Yeah.
Bob, tell us a little bit about I kind of gave you a little bit of introduction of you about your family, brothers and sisters, and a little bit about where you were born and raised, and what were you first introduced to first? I'm assuming basketball, but also when did you pick up that guitar?
Well, born and raised in Indianapolis and lived there till I was about, 30 when I moved to Nashville, Tennessee, but I won't get too far ahead right now. But, yeah, Dad being a basketball coach, it was always kind of there. And then my mom was a musician, a music teacher, and so I was used to, knock around on the piano at home, obviously shooting baskets all the time and following Dad over to Northwest and going to the practices and the games from the time I was probably 7 years old. And even earlier than that, I'd tag along when he was at Shortridge before he even got to Northwest. But I started plinking around on the piano when I was 7 or 8 years old, and I think finally got a guitar. Mom got me one for Christmas using those old Top Value stamps when I was, 12, 13. I really remember in earnest starting to learn to try to play the guitar at 13 and taking a few guitar lessons. So that's kind of where it all kind of went together when basketball was the physical part, and then the art part was music. I was always doing that together, learning as I went.
And you just said something that the youngsters who are listening to is kind of blow their mind, but there was actually a book, and you put stamps into it, and there was actually a store you went to, and you got to turn those stamps into merchandise.
Right, yeah, there's S&H green stamps and the Top Value stamps, and I was always interested in music. And I think Mom actually got it from myself and my sister, but my sister played piano more, and then I guess I kind of just took the guitar from her. And yeah, that was it was one of those things. And I don't know when they stopped doing that, but yeah, that's my first guitar. It's still hanging on the wall back in our music room. A little cheapo guitar, but I tried to play everything I could until I could get the better guitar when I was 13, 14 years old.
How many brothers and sisters do you have?
Got 2 sisters and 1 brother. The older sister Lisa lives up in Indianapolis as a retired dietitian from the VA, and my younger sister Julie, my older sister than me, and then Julie, who also went to Northwest High School, is now down in not too far from you there in Katy, Texas, and then my brother Bill, the last one to come along. He's in Indianapolis and quite a bass player. He's one of, I think, Indianapolis' top bass players, and now plays with Duke Tomato up there. And so we get him when we can to play along with us, but he's a little bit higher up the chain than we are. But so yeah, they got the 4 of us.
Did your dad have any musical talent, or was it just your mom?
Well, Mom had the raw talent. Dad could sing. When Mom was a choir director over at St. Michael's, there on 30th Street, and then we moved a little further out west towards St. Gabriel's on 34th Street. He was in the choir, and he could sing, and he actually liked to write poetry sometimes, and but it wasn't maybe as much of a natural thing, but he could sing and carry a tune, and but Mom had the raw ability. She had more musical ability than I could ever hope to have. But yeah, it was interesting because he was an athlete his whole life, but he was quite a carpenter, and he wrote poetry as well. So kind of one of those Renaissance type guys in some ways.
This is why I do what I do with, our motto is keeping the nostalgia alive, just talking about the green stamps and also just remembering, because I was associated with the basketball program at Broad Ripple for 4 years in a row, and post that I have vivid memories of seeing your dad coaching, and that's, I like to keep those memories alive by doing what I do, but I just remember several times just looking down. Most of the time was, we're going to beat your ass. But to watch him coach and to watch him do the game, and it's really interesting. I thought I knew a lot about basketball until I started doing what I do, and to find out your dad's career and at Purdue and in the armed forces and stuff like that. So I really enjoy doing what I do, and I appreciate you being able to come on the program also. So did you guys have a hoop at your house?
Yeah, it was when we lived before we moved out to the west side. Lived there around 39th and Kessler. 38th and Kessler is a big interchange. 39th Street. We were just real close to the Pike District there where we lived, but we had this long driveway, and actually the house when we moved there, I was about seven years old, I think, and they had a backboard right above the garage. It was actually kind of built in to the house. It wasn't one that was just a standalone thing. The backboard was kind of up against the house, and it was a longer, narrow driveway. And so, we got a hoop put up, and I'd spend, cold winter days, and not so much in the summer back then. When you're a kid, you didn't play as much in the summer until you got, maybe toward high school, and then you did it all year long. But I'd be out there, it'd be snowing and raining, and out shooting hoops. And the interesting thing was, I was kind of known in high school as a corner shooter, playing the forward, and that was my corner shot was kind of a signature thing. But in that driveway, when I was really starting to hone my game, that corner shot was only about 6-7 feet away from the hoop, and so it was interesting how that I was able to develop that longer corner shot in high school. But yeah, I spent had friends over and just wore it out.
Did you, at a young age, did you go to a lot of the games when your dad was coaching? Did you, did you think, eventually I'm going to play for my dad, or as a kid were you thinking of other things, or what was your mentality when you would watch your dad coach and go to basketball games?
Oh, it was basketball. I remember. He'd bring home old basketballs that were kind of worn out from practice, the old leather balls, and I would play out in the driveway till the balls are almost like felt, because the regular leather would wear off, and my hands would get so dirty that the creases in my fingers had dirt in them all the time, and I had to get a special brush to get the dirt out of my fingers. And I'd go to school and had these dirty-looking hands, even though they were scrubbed the best I could. But it was always, from the time especially when he got the job at Northwest, Friday, Saturday nights, it was at the games. During Christmas breaks, I'd go to all the practices and try and shoot baskets at one end of the floor when the team was working on, when they weren't doing full court stuff. And a couple times I'd miss a shot and it would get out in the court, and he'd have to get out in their way, and he'd have to kind of get on me a little bit. But that was pretty much my life, and I always wanted to play for him there at Northwest. And it was interesting. I was talking to another a blogger a few weeks ago about life beyond. I kind of knew I wanted to play college ball, and as all kids, you think about playing professional, but I never really thought much about where I wanted to play after high school, because that was kind of, playing at Northwest was my athletic goal, and then after that I didn't really know. But yeah, from the time I was probably, when he got the job out there, it was every Friday, Saturday night, and sometimes I think, usually, when I got into junior high, I didn't really have to miss any games because our games were on weeknights and things like that, because I played at West Lane in 8th and 9th grade and went to Northwest for 3 years. But I don't think I missed any games from the time I was probably 7 or 8 years old, unless I was sick or something, until the time I played and graduated, and then, of course, going to college and couldn't keep up with it as much in person. But yeah, it was. I felt like I'd gone to Northwest for, 8 or 10 years. But from the time I actually was introduced to it to the time I graduated from high school there. So yeah.
What was it like playing at Northwest and being the coach's son? Was there more pressure on you? Did you get a hard time from other players? I mean, what was it like playing for your dad?
It was everything I wanted it to be. I mean, it was something I had always hoped to be able to do. And I didn't feel the pressure so much, even though he had to ride me a little harder, not to show any favoritism or anything. But I think I had come in. I had been on some really good teams in junior high. There's some guys I ended up playing against that went on to North Central. We had really good teams there, so I think I fit in, and it wasn't like I didn't have the game to match up with the other guys that was on the floor with at the time. So I don't think, I'm sure there's some people that probably thought I was just on there because he was my dad, but I think I proved that I was worthy. And we had such a good group of guys. Everybody, we respected each other's abilities from the first time we met. The guys like Carl and Leon and Keith, and so there was never any feeling, I don't think, among the team members. There were some times where I felt like I was, again, Dad had to ride me a little harder, and I'd come home from practices and just felt like, man, what did I do today? But it never left the practice floor. We'd get home and watch games on TV or have dinner, and it wasn't, and it was never anything beyond that where he would, if I didn't have a good practice, we didn't talk about stuff like that, or a game, bad game. It was just move on to the next things. But I don't know. It was had to kind of look out for that, but it was never that big of an issue, I don't believe.
Most of the guys that I talked to that played high school basketball in Indiana, it's up until 1997, the best team in the state won the state championship, and it wasn't divided into classes. And
right.
I always felt that most of the people I talked to, like someone who lived in the Gary area or in the South Bend area, or what I'm leading to with playing in Indianapolis, is that you have so much talent and you beat each other up all during the regular season that, there should be a lot more state champions from the Indianapolis area and those other areas that I mentioned. But when you have to play each other and beat each other up all season, that's just the way it ends up.
Yeah, we had in 75, 76, gosh, there were so many really, really great programs there in the city and the county. Tech was always, we had some battles with them, and Addicts and Washington and Marshall, and schools like Ben Davis and North Central, Pike. There weren't too many slouches. Well, I can't say slouches. That's not really fair, but teams that just weren't quite up to snuff. You had great competition, and I think there were some times there where I remember talking with Dad and some of the other players, some of the other coaches. They thought if they took the schools from Indianapolis and put them out in sectionals out somewhere else out in the state, and they would probably, a lot of them in those times would come back in and probably end up in the state finals because there were so many great teams. And like you said, I think we beat Pike, or I know we beat Washington and Pike in that Ben Davis sectional that one year, and those teams are all worthy of getting to the state finals. And it's just like you said, we all knocked each other out before you had a chance, and that was kind of the way that worked back then. And I'd still, I'm kind of disappointed at class basketball, even though I understand what it is. But my thing was I wanted to be the champion instead of a champion of a class. I would have rather been the champion of all instead of the best of class. But that's just me, I understand the other side of it too. But yeah, that was a lot of great teams that didn't quite get the chance. We did beat each other out of the tournaments, too early.
You won the city championship at Northwest, right?
Yeah, I think we were at the finals on my junior year, I believe, and then I know, we won our senior year, beat, I believe it was beat Broad Ripple for the championship, and that was, with Mike Woodson and those guys, an amazing team. And again, I forgot to mention Broad Ripple last time. That was one of the, there's so many, I'm going to lose track of who they all are. But yeah, and that was, that was just amazing and wonderful because it was just, we were city champs, and out of the talent pool that Indy had back then, that was quite an accomplishment.
So your senior year, your basketball season's over. What starts your journey to where you're going to play more basketball?
Well, I'd gotten some offers from, again, I didn't have any I always was a fan of Purdue. His dad went there and Mom went to IU, so I was always partial to those. I guess I always fell on the side of Purdue when they played each other for some reason. Purdue seemed a little more like my type of place, but I just, I guess I didn't have the game at that point to feel like I could go there. I never got any interest from them either. So there's a lot of smaller colleges that seemed interested, and I think after small and mid-sized schools, I remember I think it was Southern Colorado was very interested in me, but after we lost that game in the regional, a lot of the offers, interest kind of dropped, and I was kind of not really sure what I wanted to do, and I had a chance to go to Hanover College, not too terribly far from where we live right now, and it seemed like an okay thing at the time, but it was there was a little bit of a not sure what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't really want to go too far away from home, and that was maybe the thing about against the Southern Colorado that probably wasn't as didn't make it as attractive to me, and so I ended up going to Hanover for a year, and that didn't really, the academics and the athletics really didn't suit me all that well, and so it's again kind of another search the following year to go somewhere else, and at that point, Dad, again, we were kind of looking for different places to go, and I'm not sure how we ended up making a visit over to Albany, Illinois, but it was the Illinois junior college system. They had Albany Central College, and the junior college system in Illinois was pretty interesting, I guess, and it may still be the way it is now, that it was kind of taxpayer funded, and they had one basically located within 45 minutes or 45 miles of every residence, so almost in every small town or within, they had a small junior college, which was almost like a high school. And so we talked to the coach over there, and he liked the style of the Indiana basketball players that, so I ended up, he was really interested in me, and so I ended up and established a residence over there, and you pay a registration fee, rented an old house, and it wasn't too expensive. I don't remember, folks were paying for stuff back then. So I ended up going there, and after I had a really good year, this team didn't have a stellar record. I think we won more than we lost, but I had a good year individually. And again, though, at the end of that year, I had offers from other smaller colleges, and you know, as I said earlier, a lot of players want to go to the biggest place they can go or get to the biggest competition level, and eventually you have your eyes on playing pro ball. And I still thought in my mind that I could maybe do that because you're 20 years old and you feel like you're bulletproof and you're on kind of the top of your game and physical self, and so I had a chance. My junior college coach at that point, he had talked to some other small schools and mentioned those to me, and I thought, it's kind of like going back to the Hanover size school, and it just didn't seem as attractive to me. And so he ended up going up to talk to Indiana State, since we're in Olney's, about 30 miles west of Vincennes, so it's not terribly far from Indy, and wasn't too far from Terre Haute at Indiana State. And also, the year I was at Olney was when they had that terrible tragedy down at the University of Evansville, and the plane crashed, and they were rebuilding their program the following year. And coach, his name's Frank Law, I think he lives south of Indianapolis now, really believed in me and put a good sales job about me and to those places. And he said the University of Evansville would accept me as a walk-on, but Indiana State more so as a walk-on. So I think he knew maybe that Bird was going to be up there and that it would be a good opportunity for me. And so I went up and visited with Coach King, and he said, yeah, I accept you as a walk-on. He didn't promise me anything. He said, I've got Carl Nix coming back from junior college. He's going to be my starting guard, and Steve Reed from Warsaw is going to be my other guard. And I think maybe you could be the one to maybe fill in for them, give them a break every now and then let them get back in. So that's kind of the short story how I ended up at Indiana State. I think I had worked really hard, and obviously Coach, I guess I'd proven myself enough that he believed in me enough to recommend me highly to ISU, and they accepted me up there. So,
Bob, what was your first interaction? What was your first interaction or your first thoughts once you saw Larry Bird on a basketball court?
Well, it was, I went up there in the summer, and I had known Brad Miley, stepping back just a little bit. He had played at Speedway for a couple of years, and I'd played with him over there at Meadowood Park in the summer. And then he went to Rushville, and we could have possibly played them in the state tournament that year, which was a game I would have loved to have played. We would have matched up really well with him back in '76. But anyway, I knew Brad, and I don't know who I got in touch with that summer before I went to ISU to go, because most of the guys are on the team. They had summer jobs there, and every afternoon they'd get in the old arena and play. So I got a chance to go over there and play, and I didn't know what to expect. All I knew, the main thing that I remember was for once I was on Larry's team in the pickup game. Usually in practices, we were going up against those guys, but he was one of those guys that just made you play better. It's one of those intangible things that I remember one time in particular, he had a 15-foot jump shot about the top of the key, right around the free throw line. But I was under the basket, and I was wide open for just an easy layup, and just in a pickup game would have been easy enough for him to hit that shot. But he passed me the ball. First time I'd really ever met him. He looked at me as an equal at that point. There's another guy that got a better shot, and he gave me the ball, and it was. I just felt like I played better when I was on his team in that particular time. And then as the season wore on, he'd do things like, how in the world did he see that guy behind him? He had that innate sense of where everybody was at on the floor at all times. He could set those behind the head passes where it didn't look like he was even looking at the guy, and just hit him perfectly. I never saw him throw a bad pass. If the pass was good, the player may not have been ready for it. By paying attention. That's one thing you had to really do when you were playing with him, to pay attention to what he was doing with the ball, because he wouldn't be looking at you, but he'd get the ball right to you. So yeah, it was just still. And then the whole year, it's like, how in the world? How did he do that? How did he see? How did he know? It's something. And somebody asked me what you could learn from a player like Bird, and I thought you can't really learn some that type of stuff. It's just he had the natural ability that he just continuously worked on. The thing of, well, I guess what you learned from him is just you work hard and just work at it and make the best of what you've got.
So you spent the last 2 years of your eligibility at Indiana State, right?
Yes.
During that magical run of going up, the finality of going up against Michigan State, what was that season like? What was it? How did it compare to high school basketball? Where did you find yourself? What did you find yourself thinking about? What was that year like?
Well, it was. I guess back then it was real easy to live in the moment. Nowadays we get out and we've got stuff to look ahead to, schedules to make, and all that, and so it's harder to live in the moment. But back then it was, you were just kind of in the moment. The team I had in high school was a great team. I mean, we were like a brotherhood, and it was similar to that. We were a little bit older, so had some more individuality at college. But the whole year, everybody, I think we all knew our role. Coach King had told me what he didn't promise anything, but he told me what he thought I could do. And when he had his heart attack and had to step away from the coaching, then Coach Hodges took over, and I don't know if he was as keen on me as Coach King might have been, but he honored Coach King's commitment to me. And but we all, us guys that were more the reserves, we knew what our role was, and that was to make it as tough on the starters and the top 7 or 8 guys as we could. We call ourselves the average white team because there's that band called the Average White Band back then, but we always wore the white jerseys, and the starters wore the blue, and so we call ourselves the average white team, and that was kind of our little our team, the sub-team that we, our little pride thing. And but as the year wore on, we just worked hard. I mean, it's like boot camp. I've never been through harder practices in my life. The first 3 or 4 weeks, like 4-hour practices and drills and wearing out shoes. I'd wear out maybe a couple pairs of shoes during the high school season and even up through junior college. And I was blowing through shoes every, and not playing as much as the starters, but every 3 weeks to a month, have to get a new pair of shoes because they either just the bottom would rip on them or I'd tear out the side of them or something. So very intense. And but as we got on through the season, I think everybody just took things one game at a time. We worked hard as the reserves, trying to make it tough on the starters. And the thing was, Coach Hodges and his staff were really, the scouts would go out and check the other teams we were playing, and they really had it down on, we knew, what the other team was going to do, their offensive schemes, and they would assign me or Rod McNally from Speedway was the other walk-on. We were kind of the guards, which is a little transition for me. I always played forward up to that point, and then playing guard was a bit of a change. That they said, now you're going to be so-and-so. He likes to dribble to the left and turn back and do different things, and each reserve had their assignment, so the starters could know what the opposition was going to do, and they had us so well prepared, really all year. So we took our role seriously as kind of the practice squad, I suppose you want to call it that. So the starters would know as close as they could. I mean, if we were as good as the guys that were on their team, we might be playing on another team. But, have them so well prepared for what to expect in the games. But again, just went along and we started winning games. And I don't think any of us really felt the pressure when we're 5-0, 7-0, 8-10, 12-0, and started getting a little bit of a national attention through the rankings. I think being a small mid-major at that point, and the media and there wasn't the cable TV and all that, so we were still kind of obscure. And I know at one point, though, we had, in one of the polls, I'm not sure what our record was at that point, they had put us at number 1, and it was Monday afternoon practice, and Coach Hodges came in and said, well, how's it feel to be number 1, guys? And everybody kind of thought, well, yeah, that's cool, but, we got practice, so let's just get on with it. And we didn't let it really, I don't remember it affecting anybody as far as, oh, man, we're 16-0, we got to, pressure's on now. Just everybody took it one game at a time. and the fans were great. They after big win, they'd meet us back at the arena or sometimes at the airport, and so that was really cool. But again, it was just kind of a one game at a time, and I never really felt, even all the way up to the tournament. It was just a real exciting time, and we just all took it in stride, I think, pretty well.
What was that tournament run like, and was there any point before you guys started the tournament run did you think, you know what, we could win this whole thing?
Yeah, there was one time, I don't know, there may have been conversations about it between us guys, but I remember just one time being in the dorm room, and part of the weird thing about that season, like I mentioned, Rod McNally from Speedway, he was the other walk-on, and at that year, they could only take 12 players on the road during the conference season. We had 13, so Rod and I had to flip a coin, and we'd alternate road trips, which is kind of hard because he'd go on one. You'd be a 2-game usually, a Thursday and a Saturday, and then the next road trip I'd get to go. But then the NCAA tournament, that was no worries with that. But at one point, it was getting toward the end of the season, and maybe, I don't know if it was after we'd won the conference championship or not, but I was just sitting in my dorm room and thinking, man, we could do this. We could get, because at that time, the tournament wasn't as big. I think there was only
48.
I'm not sure how many teams there were. We had, because what we had to do, we played a sub-regional, they called it a sub-regional out at Lawrence, Kansas, which was really cool because we got to play out at Allen Fieldhouse there. It's a classic barn, as I call it, like Hinkle Fieldhouse in Indy. Those are the best arenas. So they echo and they boom, and they're not like a theater like some of these places are now. And then when we won that game, played Virginia Tech, then we were in the Sweet 16, and then went to Cincinnati. But it was there's that certain point that I remember us real specifically in my dorm thinking, man, we could do this, and so there was a certain point, but up to, I guess, it was probably during the conference tourney or maybe right after we'd won that, we just still took everything one game at a time.
What was the disappointment level with losing the championship game? Was it more of we had a great season, or was it more of you didn't win the national title?
Oh, we were crushed. I mean, I spoke to myself. I felt like I cried on the bench like I'd played the whole game. It was just because we felt I think at that certain point we had the momentum. Again, the pressure wasn't there really, but we felt like we can do this. We had kind of turned back a lot of the naysayers, and Larry was usually able to, if he wasn't having a good game, somebody else could light it up. And the game that Bob Heaton hit that long shot out in New Mexico State to put the game into overtime and end up winning to preserve the winning streak. Larry had fouled out, and so he didn't even play in that overtime period. And we knew that we could do well if he wasn't in the game, or even if he was having a bad game. I think in another game, one that I didn't get to go to on a road trip, they had, out at Bradley maybe, they had bottled him up and he only had 4 points. But I think Carl had, Carl Nix took up the slack that game. So there was times when Larry wasn't on top of his game that we still had found a way to win. And so we knew that if they had bottled Larry up, we figured we could still do well. But I just felt like it was kind of a throwback to the disappointment after we'd lost in the regional there in Indianapolis in high school. Just crushed, we thought we could do it.
With your, did your dad follow you guys, and was he excited about your guys' progress and what you did that year?
Yeah, that was a cool thing because, I mean, as a father, I'm sure he was, and told me he was very proud of what I'd been able to do. But then as a coach and former player, from that standpoint, it was a great source of pride for him too. And he always took pride in no matter what his former players did that went on to different schools and had their level of success. He just enjoyed that so much, and this was an extra special thing to be able to. He was able to come out. I think his brother lived in Kansas City, so they went out and visited them, then came on out to Lawrence to see the sub-regional game there, and then, of course, Cincinnati for the Sweet Sweet 16 was just down the road from Indianapolis, so I was able to get them tickets for that. And then they came out to Salt Lake City as well. So I know he was disappointed as well, but I think it was a great source of pride, and I was glad that he was able to be, he and Mom were able to be a part of that, in spite of the loss.
Is there any Coach Hodges stories or any Larry Bird stories that we haven't read in any books?
Well, I didn't get to know Hodges all that well, other than that like I said earlier, I thought he was a brilliant tactician. He had us so well prepared, and with his assistant coaches that scouted, and I think that was a lot of the. Of course, Bird kind of made everybody play better, and with his being the cog of the wheel. But I don't really have any really crazy stories about him. I know Larry was kind of a private person. He was, the self-proclaimed actually Hick from French Lick. Sometimes he called himself the prick from French Lick, but that was that was all self-proclaimed as well. He was always a fierce competitor. He always, if there's any kind of jokes going around or something, he would always get the last word. I do remember, though, in one game, I didn't get into the games much to play along with him. I was usually, and I always joke about my claim to fame was getting standing ovation every game I came in, but I was usually coming in for him. He would be the last one off from the starters, and I'd be either the next to the last or the last one off the bench. And so there'd be a standing ovation. I'd say, "Hey, I'm getting a standing ovation but it was really for him." But there's a time where we were, maybe for a couple minutes, didn't come in for him, and we were on the court together, and the game was way out of hand. We were ahead by 30 or something like that. But one of us threw a bad pass, and he'd get on you. "Come on, man!" He didn't care if the game was up. We were up by 40. He wanted you to play your best, and there's a couple times where. There's one story that I meant to tell when we had our 40th anniversary thing a year ago, and they had interviewed several of us. And over the Christmas break that year, we'd stay in town at the hotel. They closed the dorms, and so they'd put us up in the Sheraton. And we'd have a roommate. I think I might have roomed with Tommy Crowder and then Bob Heaton. I'm not sure whether he stayed there. His folks just lived down south of Terre Haute, and then Larry would stay there. Well, Tommy Crowder was a gun enthusiast, and so we'd go out go out in the country near Bob Heaton's folks, and just shoot guns, target shoot. And Tommy had the big, Clint Eastwood, Dirty Harry, 44 Magnum, the big long barrel of the gun. It's just, and so we just do that kind of stuff. Well, one time we were out with shotguns, and Larry or Tommy and Bobby were in. There's a farmer's friend of Bob's that lived near him, and both brothers, and they had tractors, and we were riding around, and these small tractors had these small cabs in them, and so the driver was driving, and Bob and Tommy were in one tractor, kind of squeezed into the cab, and then me and Larry were in the other tractor, and just kind of going on to different places out toward the woods to target shoot. And at this one point, me and Larry were in this tractor, and we tried to go up the guy was trying to go up this little bit of a rise, and it was kind of icy, and the tractor started to slip, the wheel started to slip a little bit, and he started to let the tractor roll back down a little bit. Well, then I guess he put the clutch back in, caught the back wheels, and the front end of that tractor kind of reared up, and like it was almost going to roll over backwards with us. And the front end kind of lifted up, and then I think he released the clutch, and it kind of just laid back over to the right, and then we kind of rolled slowly back down this. It wasn't a very big rise, but it was like, holy crap. We could have rolled that thing over. And, of course, we joked about the headline being, All-American Larry Bird and unknown player injured in a farm accident. But, I've thought about that, and it's like, if something would have really happened on that day, that could have changed the course of college basketball history. And that was one story that not too many people know about, because it was we were just out killing time. I think we had practice later that afternoon, and that tractor, that front end bucked up enough to make your heart jump up into your your chest or jump out of your chest. And we kind of laughed about it later, but that could have been, who knows? Thankfully, we don't. But yeah, Larry, I don't know, he was still kind of a private person. In fact, it was till years later I'd get a chance to go see him play in the pros. And one time somebody noticed me up there. The Pacers were playing Boston, and I had gotten tickets to the game and kind of went down toward where the players went in, and somebody recognized me and let me come down to the locker room. Of course, the Pacers had beat Boston, and Larry just didn't take very well the defeat, so he wasn't very talkative after that. But as the years have gone by, and he's especially after the he had the thing I noticed the most where he had really kind of loosened up. I felt like I was more of a friend than just a former teammate, where we had they had dedicated that statue to him over at Holman Center. I don't know if you ever had a chance to check that out. It's quite an impressive structure that they've built, and they had a big day around him. And he came back for that. A lot of times he wouldn't come back for the reunions because he thought all the attention, and rightly so, all the attention would have gone to him, and he wanted the teammates, the rest of the team, to not just be shadowed by him. But I mean, we would have been okay with it, because he deserved the attention that he got. But he was, and sometimes he couldn't come because he was still playing. But we have different reunions. But they had back in 2000, I think late 2013, they had the statue dedication there outside the Holman Center, and at a private dinner a little later on, there wasn't a whole lot of us there, and right before I left, I just said it was an honor to be able to play with you on the team. I said, I'm not sure how much I had to do with anything. I worked real hard in practice. He goes, man, you had a lot to do with the success of that team, so don't even think about that. And so that really made me feel good, because you never know. As a reserve, we tried to do the best we could, but he was obviously the big cog in that. But if he wouldn't say something like that just to be saying it either. He was he'd say what he meant, and so that meant a lot.
So, the NCAA tournament is over. I'm assuming at this point in time, maybe, you have decided that you're not going to be a professional basketball player. What is your mindset? What was your major? What did you want to do? What were you, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, after that, of course, after our big year, I had one more year there at ISU, and that year was kind of an up and down year. And so after school, I always, again, was always, I guess I was a closet guitar player, musician. I think after that point, I'd only played in front of people maybe one time when I was over here at Hanover, played a James Taylor song at a dorm party, and I was just generally pretty shy, and it's kind of odd when people know that I get out and play music now. They said, he was always so shy. How did you get up in front of people to do stuff like that? But I always wanted to play music, and there's something when you've been given that gift, you can't not do it, no matter what it does, and no matter how scary it is. But I left ISU and was a little bit short of a degree just because I transferred from Hanover to Alney and then to ISU. But I still was thinking the traditional route of trying to get some sort of college degree. So I think I laid out a semester in the fall of 1980 and then enrolled at IUPUI in Indianapolis and was studying computer technology, because back then, 1980, that was still kind of the thing of the future. And I was thinking, well, this might be a thing to get into, to who knows where it would go. And so I was doing that, but at the same time, following this love of music and really knowing that if I couldn't play pro basketball, but music was something I really wanted to do. I just didn't know where I wanted to go with it, because I was a big fan of guys like Bob Seger and some of the more rock type artists, and but I didn't really have that kind of a voice, and so I just was kind of noodling around and going to school and playing in a band of a guy that I took guitar lessons from when I was 13. He was not that much older than me at the time, but he was out playing, and we'd play weddings and festivals and stuff like that, so I kind of got my feet wet as far as getting out to do more live performing. And I met a guy at IUPUI in some of that computer curriculum. He was a musician, and we had similar backgrounds and interests, the Neil Young, Dan Fogelberg, and Led Zeppelin, and we got together and started playing some tunes, and then we ended up getting a gig at the old McShane's Lounge in Indianapolis. A friend actually owned it at the time, so that's how we got in there. And we played like for 6 hours, and there's no guarantee. I don't think they paid us anything. We'd split like $50 in tips over those 6 hours. And there's one night was way even less than that when we played. But that's where I just was trying to find a way into finding my musical direction, and I loved so many types of music, but I needed to find something that really suited my voice, and had grown up listening to a lot of John Denver and Kenny Loggins, so I was more the acoustic-based artist, but then I also liked some of the rock artists, and like the Jimi Hendrix types, which I couldn't begin to play like him. So I just was kind of riding along and started playing some acoustic stuff with this friend of mine, Bill Rumley, out of Indianapolis, and I was studying computer technology, and I was kind of in over my head in that. And I remember the very last final exam that I took, I was just struggling, and I basically turned in that last final blank. It was one of these real heavy-duty operating systems classes where it's just the really gut levels of the computer, the basic computer operation, and I was just like, what is this stuff? I'm so far over my head in this. And so I said a little prayer. I said, Lord, what do you want me to do here? I've been trying to figure this out and trying to play music on the side, and so I turned that final in, and I thought I'm done with school. I got to figure out something. And the next day, a good friend of mine from Indiana State actually roomed with him one summer there, a guy named Bill Edwards. He called and said there's a couple friends of his that I had met before. They're musicians that wanted to get together with me to maybe play some music, and I thought, I think that's my answer. And so I got in this trio, and we did some, they were into the Dan Fogelberg and again, Neil Young, Joni Mitchell, which is still the stuff that's the bulk of the influence of the music we play today. And so I started playing with those two, and started figuring out that at a certain point I wanted to take this as far as I could go. It's kind of like the same thing with the basketball route. I wanted to, pro basketball turned out to not be, but I didn't have to look back. I kind of knew what my ability was, and I was able to not feel like I had, left any stones unturned in that realm. So I again started looking to, writing my own songs, and again through this Bill Edwards' help, started to look at maybe trying to move to Nashville and meet some people down there. So it was a course of after I left school, it was probably in 83, 84, somewhere in there. I can't remember exactly. The years all kind of run together, but started writing tunes, and then just kind of let the Lord lead me where He wanted me to go, and ended up moving down to Nashville in 1988. I had met, through Edwards, he had gone down there on business and met this guy who was really a great guitar player, and then turned out to be a really good Christian guy who this guy named Dave Salyer, who ended up getting a gig with the Barber Mandrell. He said, "Yeah, you guys want to move down, or if Bob wants to move down here, I'll help him meet people, and anything I can do to help him, I will." So I thought, well, I know one person in Nashville, so I'm ready to make the change and go. And so that's how I ended up kind of going down to Nashville back in 1988, I guess it was. I had the job. I wasn't just playing music enough to make enough money. I got a job at Indiana University Hospital as a pharmacy technician. That's how I was surviving back then too. And on my free days I had off, I'd be doing something with music or trying to get gigs on the weekends. And so yeah, I kind of left out that regular work thing, so I've kind of forgotten about it. Because you got to have the real job for a while. And then when I moved to Nashville, I got a job at a hospital down there, so I didn't have to do the traditional musician job of waiting tables and flipping burgers. I would have been terrible at that. And I appreciate the work, that kind of work, because that's tough, dealing with public and waiting tables, but you got something you love to do, and you find a way to make it happen. And so I was working at a hospital down there in Nashville as a pharmacy tech, doing that kind of work to pay the bills. And so,
how does Bomar and Ritter come into your life? Well,
I moved there in March of '88, and kind of got my feet on the ground to talk to some people, and they said, just kind of give yourself a month or so just to kind of figure out where you're at in town, where things are at. So I went out and started playing writers' nights. You just go sign up, and you get to play 2 or 3 songs of your own. Everybody plays their own material down there for the most part. I mean, if you get a gig at a restaurant or something, you can mix in covers. But when you play the writers' nights, you just play your own songs, which was pretty cool. It was kind of inspirational to, you know, get yourself writing, and you hear other songwriters and some that have been there for a while, and you hear how they do it, and it's like, man, you know, it either inspires you or it intimidates you, or a little bit of both. And so I started doing that and just kind of knocking around through the summer of '88. Again, this Dave Salyer would hang out with him quite a bit, and we'd go play basketball, and of course he and his wife are big Boston Celtics fans, so I had some, you know, they were interested in Larry Bird backstories and stuff. But as I started, it was for about a year, hung out with him a bit, and when he had the time, he was pretty busy touring, but just knocking around playing writers' nights, working during the day, and you know, running and staying in shape. And so my life seemed pretty simple then. Go to work, you know, run in the afternoon, go play writers' night, and get back to Indianapolis when I could. And then it was about, I think it was in early May of 1989, there'd been a guy that I'd kind of met at one of the writers' nights, and we were hanging out quite a bit, and I'd back him up on his songs, he'd back me up on mine, and at one point he had met this woman at his church, and he told me about her. He said, I think you ought to meet this woman. She's really neat. He wasn't trying to fix me up or anything, but just he thought she was a really neat person. And so at one point in early May of '89, he had bought a house, and his roommate had moved out, so he didn't have a whole lot of furniture, and just had a decent job at Arthur Anderson down there. But he said, you know, come over tonight, we'll just play some tunes. And I guess he had invited Mary to come over, and when she got there, he said, I hope you don't mind, I've invited this other friend of mine. And so as songwriters do down there, you just get together and play songs, and so I had been trying to ask somebody out for a while, and at that point it wasn't working out, and so I thought, you know, I'm just going to concentrate on my music this summer, and not really kind of tired of trying to date anybody right now. And so when I walked in, and Mary had just broken up with somebody, and she was from what she says, maybe she had bumped her head or something. She said, you know, she was really impressed with me that day, and I thought she was really attractive, but at the same point, I was like, yeah, I'm just not quite ready to start trying to ask anybody out yet. So that's when we met, and so we kind of ran into each other a couple other times at writers' nights, and kind of got to be friends. And then this friend Steve, he had booked the Bluebird Cafe is kind of the songwriters' capital of Nashville, and probably in some people might say songwriters' capital of the country. It's a little tiny room there in Nashville where the best of the best play, and if you get a chance to get a showcase there, you've done pretty well. And so he had landed a showcase there, and he wanted us to back him up. And so we spent the better part of this particular week, probably in June, I think, of '89, and working on tunes, going out to the parks and having cookouts, and then just playing the tunes and working on his showcase songs. You get to do 3 songs in this little showcase, so it's not that it's a big deal, but it's just 3 tunes. So we were working on that, and we got to know each other a little better then, and I was getting more interested, and she was already interested, and so we started dating after she had gone home to Virginia. She's from outside of Charlottesville, Virginia, and she had gone home for a week or so, and we talked on the phone a few times and realized we really kind of missed each other, and started dating shortly after that, and realized that we didn't take too long to realize we wanted to spend the rest of our lives together, and so we started. I think the first gig we played together, this other guy that we knew had needed a fill-in for a gig at this hotel, and so we started playing music together then, and our harmonies blended real well. It wasn't too hard to work out the tunes. We had similar influences again with the singer-songwriter era of the 70s with the Joni Mitchell was Mary's big influence, and then Dan Fogelberg was, once I finally, stepping back a little bit, finally really got into Dan Fogelberg, I found my musical direction. His voice and the style of songs was really, it was like a laser beam almost, like that's the music, kind of music I want to do. so we started playing together then, and then we met, again, it was like early May of 89, and got married the end of April in 1990, and so been playing music together in one form or fashion ever since then. We put out a recording our first recording together in early '93, and which still sells pretty well. We don't have any more CDs of that left. We need to get some more made. And but back at that time, the internet was still kind of in its infancy, and we knew some other players that played these places out in. We booked some gigs around Nashville, but we also tried to get out and play some places in North Carolina and out in Missouri, some little coffee houses we'd heard about, and realized that how quickly you can lose money when nobody knows who you are when you book yourself at these places. And so anyway, we did, for a couple, 3 years after that first recording, we really tried to get out and promote it, get people to get interested in us and as far as managers and things like that. But there's so many. I mean, everybody in Nashville is amazing. You may not like the type of music they're playing, but they're really good at it. And so it's really hard to get any kind of traction. I think we were kind of on the edge of maybe getting some interest at times, but it was kind of hard. So at a certain point, we just kind of laid back from our music and still working regular jobs, but traveling when we could. And I can go on and give the whole evolution if you want me to, where we're at up to this point.
Please.
Okay, well, at that point when we kind of got to a point, it's like we don't know where quite to go with this. We had plenty of other songs to do another recording, but back then it was a little more expensive to record. Now you can do some stuff pretty inexpensively in home studios and get some really good recordings. But we were just like, we didn't know really where to go with it, so we kind of backed away from performing like we were. And in the meantime, we had both been working with the Country Music Foundation Words and Music program, where they had a songwriting curriculum that they would send out to schools that were interested in the kind of central Tennessee, northern Alabama region. And it's like usually they would go from third grade on up through high school. They had a woman that coordinated that, and they would have the kids end up trying to write song lyrics. And as songwriters, we would volunteer to work in that program. What they would do, say there was an elementary school that fifth grade class, they had these song lyrics. They would contact one of us or both of us to work with the school. They would send us the lyrics a week ahead of time. The school is going to come into town and do a tour of the Country Music Hall of Fame Museum, maybe just a tour of Nashville. But as part of that tour, they had a small theater in the old Country Music Hall of Fame. They've got a huge, great big one downtown now. But they'd send us the song lyrics, maybe 50 to 60 sets of lyrics, and we were to put music to as many of those lyrics as we could. And we didn't have a lot of time in a week and they didn't want you to edit too much, so you had to go through the lyrics. And at that point, you could say, "Well, this one, this is good." They're either not a writer or they're not a writer yet, and we didn't have time to edit things like that. So we would maybe get, if we did a session individually, we might get 6 or 7 songs done. If we did it together, we might get up to 10, maybe 11 songs, and they would bring the classes into this little theater in the Hall of Fame Museum, and we would talk about what we did with the song and play the song for them. And it was the kids would be, we'd say, "Oh, now where's Mary Smith?" And everybody'd look over and laugh and cheer and clap, and they'd, "Well, here's what we did your song. It was a great lyric," and and they were always amazed at hearing their lyric. But the music, the bad thing was, though, we might have gotten 60 or 70 sets of lyrics, and maybe 10 or 12 or less got picked to be turned into a song. And it's a great lesson in the music business. I mean, there's so many great writers, and very few of them get published, and even fewer of them get recorded, and even fewer of them get radio play, and then the very few get to be a hit song. But we started to take that idea to Mary's old elementary school up in Virginia, where the whole class would get to write 1 or 2 songs, and we would go up and work. Even before we got into what turned into our program called Lyrics Alive, we would still set the music to lyrics, the lyrics they'd sent to us, set music to that, and come back and up there to Virginia and play a concert for the kids. The kids didn't really get as involved with the writing process other than what they had done in the classroom. Well, eventually, one special needs school up there, the kids who had kind of the OCD and just issues not that were like violent issues or drug issues, but kids who just couldn't quite fit in the regular schools, they wanted us to come in and write with the kids. They wanted us to come in for more than one day. So what it ended up, we would go in and they would have their song ideas, and we would edit and write the songs with them right there at this school. And in this one case, which made us realize how much bigger the whole thing was than we were, this young boy had written a lyric about his sister who had died in a farm accident down in Texas. So they had this huge ranch. So, you use helicopters to fly from one end to the other. It was that big. And his little sister, it had been about 6 years prior to when we had worked with him back in the mid-'90s. She had fallen off the back of a truck. They were riding in the back of a pickup truck, and they hit a bump, and it threw her out. And he ran to her, and she basically died in his arms. And he felt like he should have been able to save her. And so he wrote this lyric about how life is precious. And Mary put some amazing music to that, and we played it for him and then played it for the school that day. And it, the whole place was in tears, and we realized later on that this kid had, we didn't realize all this other stuff about how he thought he should have saved her and all that, but it helped open up another avenue of his therapy to realize the physics teacher said it was physically impossible, the way the momentum and all that stuff is with physics, to have caught her and saved her, and it helped him with the other therapy he had gotten, this one last little thing, it helped him move past that tragedy, and we thought, holy cow, we've never thought about anything like this. We were just thinking this was the fun and challenge of putting words together and making songs and things. And so we started to try and expand that out, and it took quite a while to, and we finally gave it our own name, called Lyrics Alive. The country music thing was called Words and Music. And they wanted, the people that ran that wanted songwriters to maybe take it on their own and maybe go out and try and make some money with it, but just to expand the idea of songwriting and creativity to kids. So this is all while we were still living in Nashville in the mid to late 90s. And as the time was wearing on, I really wanted to move back up to Indiana. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in Tennessee, and Mary didn't really care as long as we lived someplace out in the country, which is what I always wanted as well. So we weren't playing as much of our own music like we are now, but we were working to build this Lyrics Alive program, getting into schools, and the guy that Mary went to church with was an executive at a business down there in Nashville, and he thought we ought to turn it into a nonprofit and get grant money and help us to be able to make a living at it, but offer the program to schools at a lower cost and everything. So a lot of it was involved in that. We finally were able to turn that into a nonprofit, but we moved back up this way from Nashville in June of 2002 and continued to expand the program. I still actually went down to work in Nashville every other week. I was on an every other week schedule at the hospital there. So it was kind of crazy being home and then going for about 18 months. I'd go down there and stay with friends and work and trying to get this Lyrics Live program off the ground. And eventually I was able to jump out of the hospital in early 2004 and go full-time with our Lyrics Alive program. And we still weren't doing as much of our own music like we are now. And so, at some point in Scottsburg, which is the county seat here in Scott County, they opened a coffee house, and they were having music there. And it was, again, like play for tips kind of a thing. And we went ahead and got booked there, and we realized how much we missed playing the music we had been playing and some of our original stuff. So as it evolved, we started booking ourselves during the summertime to play in some coffee houses, and mainly for tips because nobody knew who we were, and we couldn't command a lot of money or any money at that point. But we were still working with the Lyrics Live program, and it was going quite well up through 2008. We had up to, I think, 15 programs in the school year, and it was a 4-day program. We'd go into the first 2 days, edit either song lyrics they had written, the schools had written ahead of time, usually 4th or 5th graders, or we'd just write, if they didn't have time, we'd just start from scratch in the classroom. and we'd set music to those lyrics, and then on the third day we would come back into the classroom, teach the kids the songs. On the fourth day, do a live concert and record it and try and make CDs available. So there's a lot of work involved, creative work in that. So doing 13 to 15 programs in a school year was really a full load, because you couldn't do, we would do 3 weeks in a row at a certain point, and it would just, we would be so tapped at the end of that third week, because there's a lot of work involved. And so we did that a lot, well, really just up till last year, when after 2008, when the economy kind of crashed out, and the funding as far as the nonprofits started to dry up. Schools were shifting their focus on their funding to other things, and so and the kids kind of changed too. They weren't quite as I don't know. They're having more trouble focusing, and so it was, things weren't quite as enjoyable as they were. So we just kind of have ridden it out to the end, and we've really stopped doing that now. If a school wants to do it, we've shuttered the nonprofit. We're not doing that anymore, but we can still do it if a school wanted to do it. And in the meantime, we've been ramping up our own playing for the last 10 years or so, and getting up to the point now where we play lots of wineries. Our music's a good match for wineries. We're not kind of a laid-back vibe in general, depending, but we do some blues and some more folk rock type stuff, but wineries, restaurants, and any place that will really have us. And probably averaging in the summertime, we're averaging at the rate of probably 120 dates a year. We don't play that many because during the winter, traditionally we weren't doing programs weren't doing gigs because we were doing school programs, and there are less gigs available in the winter because a lot of the wineries only do music in the summer, and so there's more musicians and less gigs in the winter, so they're a little harder to come by. So that's kind of where we've ended up at this point. But that's kind of the full-time thing. I still, when I left the hospital there in Nashville in 2004, they asked me if I wanted to stay on as what they call PRN, as needed help, and I thought, yeah, I guess so. I don't think I'll ever need to do it, but thankfully I've still got that status, so when I have an opening in our schedule, I'll go down there for 2 or 3 days and work a little bit. It's a little bit of a safety net for us to bring in some money if we're not quite as busy, or during the off season, usually November through March or April. Of course, now everything's shut down. They don't need me down there. And the nice thing about it, though, is I can tell them the days I'm available, and they say, come on down. So it's not like you have to be here on these dates. I can, at this point, thankfully, pick the days and go. So that's kind of the long, short history of Beaumont and Ritter. But it's been a blessing to be able to play music, and we've we've had a lot of people that we did our first recording back in 93, early 93 was released. We didn't get another one done until about 6 or 7, I think in 2013 we recorded another one up there at my brother's studio in Indy, and we have another one finished. We recorded it in Indy over the last couple years, and a friend has the guy I used to play music with in that trio in Indy has a really good studio there. He offered us the time when he didn't have anything else booked, so we kind of had to stretch it out for quite a while because he's pretty busy. He's an Emmy Award-winning sound designer, and so his studio's in quite a bit of demand, but bless his heart, he helped us with this other recording now. With there's some other things with Mary's dad, had some health issues in the fall when we were going to try and get the packaging together, and so it's just this kind of thing. We're still kind of working on that, and now with everything shut down, it's meant to be released when it'll be released, but it's a 2 CD set, so we'll have 3 CD packages out here before, or a third one out before too much longer. But we've had a lot of folks that our music has been, it's meant a lot to them. They'll be going down to a surgery or something that's happened in their life, and they said, "I put your CD on because it's such a comfort to us." And so we know if we're, we'd like to be playing to a lot bigger audiences, but if you have just a handful of people that your music has meant something to them in a crucial time in their life, then I think we've had that sort of success. You can't turn your nose at. As musicians, of course, you're always wanting to play the bigger audiences. Again, that you've got people that really enjoy hearing you play, and they take the time to come out when there's hundreds of other things they could be doing. We're extremely grateful for that, and it inspires us to keep on going.
Where can people hear your music, get your music, buy your music? Do you have social media? Is it all BomarandRitter.com? Do you have a YouTube channel?
Yeah, we've got a YouTube channel. I don't have a whole lot of stuff on that right now. Just again, now I've got the time to do it. We've been out doing like yard work and things that or sometimes when you don't have the gigs coming up, we had stuff scheduled we've had to cancel. And sometimes it's hard just to knuckle down and, again, been grinding away as much as we have. This time has been kind of a time of doing projects around here that we haven't had time to do because we've been out playing so much. But I've loaded a couple more videos on YouTube. We got a couple concerts on there. We got quite a few videos on our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Bomar and Ritter Music, all spelled out. And then our website, we're kind of in transition. The web guy that's helping us out, we're trying to get a new host on it, and so I'm not sure where it's at right now. I haven't looked at it to see what our schedule looks like, but there are a few video links on there. I just recently found out our main online source of getting music to people is we'd always tell them to go to CD Baby. Well, CD Baby doesn't do a retail thing anymore, but I think you can go to iTunes and Amazon, any of the other online retailers. We should be out there if you just go to Bomar and Ritter. You can stream us, I think, on all the streaming platforms. You can stream on those. We don't stream a whole lot of music here either. We're kind of old school in some things. We just don't have the time in other ways to stream it. I know we get CD Baby still does our digital distribution, and we have a little dashboard on there where we can go see who's listening to what song or where it's going on, and you'll see a stream of somebody streamed one of our songs. We've earned like 0.01 cents for that stream or something like that. So it takes a while to make money that way, but we're out there regardless on that. And so I'm going to have to investigate, though, once we get this other CD project finished, whether there's a way people can go directly to another. CD Baby's been good for, it's easy, you pay a certain fee, and they put it out there on all those platforms, which would be really hard for us to do on our own. And so, yeah, I would just say go wherever you stream music, or online retailers that you go to. Amazon, it seemed like one of our CDs, they had a pretty high price on it. We don't make any more money. We set the price. They send it out to the other, and then the other places set their price. It's not so much about making money. We have to look at that, but it's about connecting with people, really. If we either play a gig somewhere and we made a whole lot of money, but we didn't feel like we connected with anybody, we kind of feel leave the place feeling like, what did we really accomplish? But there's other gigs where we hardly made any money, and people are just telling how much they enjoyed it, and we kind of float home. So I would just I don't have a real great answer on that, because somebody just last week said, "Do you know the CD Baby retail store is closed?" I thought, oh, really? So I checked into it. So it should be out there, though, at iTunes and wherever else you can find online music.
I'm actually looking at Amazon Music because I'm subscribed to their Amazon Unlimited, and it's got the Take the Road album from 2013 and the First Step in 2008.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the record actually came out earlier than that, but that's when we got it up there. Yeah. So it's there. So that's good. I haven't checked our. They put a little. You have parameters on when they send you some money into. We got a little savings account where we have our when they sell CDs or the streaming amounts reach over $10. You can set it for 20, 50, or whatever you want. But it was coming in so slow. I had it at 20 for a while, and I thought, well, I'm going to bump it down to 10. And the people in our demographic they're not big streamers or big downloaders, so we're kind of caught in the middle. But people are listening to it out there. But it's been a while since we've had a $10 deposit made into the savings account. So, it's just a little extra thing that's out there. We make most of our sales and most of our revenues really just from the we get paid playing the gigs and tips, and the CDs aren't even selling as well as they used to. I think there's other avenues for, I guess, again, the people that really are into our music aren't as much into downloading, so we're kind of in that middle ground right now. Streaming, I guess, is going to be the next big thing, or getting on playlists, Pandora and Spotify playlists, and I'm not really sure. There's ways to do that, but there's too many other things to try and keep up with just what we're doing to get our gigs and get our recordings done. That's more of a younger folks thing that grew up with that makes it's pretty easy for them. But so, yeah.
What's your Facebook page again?
It's like you do Facebook.com, and then I guess whatever it's / or the one that's the top's leaning to the right, I don't know if it's forward or backslash, but then it's just Bomar and Ritter Music is spelled all out, BOMARAND RITTER Music. And I think there may still be a link on our website to CD Baby, but that's not going to get, at this point, it's not going to get folks what they want if they're interested in our music. And then again, I guess with all the streaming platforms, it should be out there. And that's the thing the nice thing that CD Baby does, gets it out there.
Bob Ritter, we ran long. I apologize.
Oh, no worries. I'm just I'm going to go take a jog here in a little bit, but we're not on a tight schedule now, which is, again, it's kind of nice to not feel like, okay, I got to get this done because I got to get this other thing done later. It's just